Okay, so in this game, I decided to play e4, and if you guys have seen my games or my channel, you know I'm mostly a d4 knight f3 player, but I do sometimes play e4, and it's mainly when my opponent has a fixed repertoire, and mainly when they play the Sicilian, because I have done some work on these lines. I did write a book on the Sicilian from White's point of view, so I have some experience here, and if I know my opponent is not going to play, I don't know, the French or some random other line, and they're just gonna go for the Sicilian, then I'll often go for this. And yeah, so Mishra, he I think I mentioned earlier, is a very talented player. He's like one of the best 10 or 11-year-olds in the country and probably in the world. So he has a ton of potential. Just seeing his games, I feel like he legitimately just plays very well. But his repertoire is extremely fixed. He plays the Taimanov exclusively against 1e4. And I decided to go for just this like super trendy line with bishop e3 and queen f3. The good stuff. This is not my first time playing this, but it is my first time playing it in a tournament game. But I actually had some practice with this line. I played some training games against another player on this channel, and I streamed some of the games. They were like classical games, then we played some rapid games as well. So I got some experience in the training games playing this line, and I ended up getting a pretty deep amount of prep here. So knight f6, castles, knight e5, queen g3, b5. So this is one of the main ways black plays against this line. There's a bunch of other options. There's like bishop d6 and d6 with the pawn, knight e5, b5, and so on. Knight f6 and then followed by knight e5. This is also quite popular, b5. And yeah, so here's the interesting thing. So Abi played this line in literally the previous game in the tournament. He played this as black in the previous round against international master Andrew Hung. And so I already knew that I wanted to play the queen f3 Taimanov against Abi in our game. And so the night before, when I was playing my game against Eson and I saw their game and I saw that they reached this exact position, this was where I wanted to go for my prep. So I was a bit bummed out because I thought, oh man, now Andrew Hong is going to play this line, and he might get some good prep and win, and then Mishra will repair the line, and he'll be much better prepared, and it will make sense for me to go for it as well. But Andrew played a little bit differently. He played with a3 here, and I decided to go for the line with f4, which in my opinion is more dangerous. And this line is pretty interesting. This is the one where black goes like bishop b7, white takes on b5, and black just ignores the bishop with like rook c8. And then it's just a huge mess. I think it's definitely an interesting try for white. I think white has good chances for an advantage, but it's pretty sharp and theoretical. So yeah, Mishra lost the previous game. But then looking at his repertoire and looking at his previous games, I had already seen that he had a game like this even before the tournament a couple of months ago against someone else. And he had this position on the board in both games after a3, bishop b7, bishop takes b5, rook c8. So he already had this in a previous game, and then Andrew repeated this against him, and he repeated it against Andrew. And so this is kind of important because it shows that like even though he knows that his opponent has prepared for him, he's still sticking to the exact same way he played before because he believes in the line, he thinks it's good, he analyzed it, and so on. Even though I think he might have lost the previous game, doesn't really matter. The point is he knows his opponent is preparing for him, but he just like plays his stuff anyway. Basically like an MVL type approach. So based on that, I felt pretty reasonable that he was just going to go for this line. So even though I played it the very next morning and I was looking at their game, he knows I saw the game before, he knows I looked at the line. He presumably knows that I have seen his games before, and so like he just doesn't care that I prepared it. He knows I'm not an e4 player, like he looked at my repertoire as well. So clearly, all signs have pointed to me just being very, very prepared for this line, but he just went here anyway. So yeah, I went for it. Wait, I didn't get bluffed by a 10-year-old. What do you mean? he played into exactly what he said he was going to play into. And no, I was happy he did, because I'm happy with the line here. So f4, knight g4. Oh well, the bishop takes b5 line. No, I was never planning on playing this one. I think f4 is just a better move. So f4, this was always the plan. So f4, knight g4, bishop g1, h5. And I think black has to make this move, otherwise the knight just gets kicked back with h3, and then it has to go back to h6. But here with the pawn, I think h3 is met with h4, and then the knight is a lot more comfortable. So e5. And yeah, now black doesn't have a lot of good squares for the knight, but black does have b4, which is concretely the only move for black. Has to make this move. Now if white takes on f6, black takes on c3. This is basically fine. White's king here is kind of opening up. Oh, there's a question about the h3 line. h3, h4. Oh yeah, let's say queen e1, knight h6, and oh sorry, but here the f4 pawn is hanging. So maybe yeah, knight h6, queen takes h4. Maybe that's okay for white, but f4 is hanging with check, and so this is probably a big problem. And yeah, I believe my opponent is 10 years old, maybe 11. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so h5, e5, b4, knight a4, knight d5. This is all the main line. h3, knight h6. No, it's fine. He says I was so stupid. I also didn't see queen takes f4 check until it was literally in front of me on the board, so it's all good. Okay, and here comes my key idea, f5. This has been played before in, I believe, in correspondence chess, maybe in tournament chess as well. And in my opinion, it's a very strong move. I think it's really powerful. I actually got the idea from Jan's opening clinic on Chess24, of all places. I mean, normally he's answering a lot of more, let's say, basic questions and like people just asking for like opening suggestions and repertoire stuff. But occasionally he gets a question about like, you know, some deep theory, and one of the Chess24 users like suggested this line, and he said like, oh, it looks pretty bad for black. Can you take a look? What do you think about it? And then basically the video was just Jan just kind of confirming that, yeah, it's like just a very, very dangerous line for black. So it's not really a pawn sacrifice because it's too dangerous for black to take this pawn. Knight takes f5 is not working because we're just losing a piece at the end. And the point is, after e takes f5, white's plan is to go queen b3. Hitting the knight, also kind of targeting the f7 pawn. Black's position, it just feels like in total disarray. Like bishop b7, bishop c4, and there's just too much pressure here. I think after knight f4, white is just directly winning with knight takes f5. The point being takes, bishop takes f7 check. So we distracted the knight. If king goes to d8, we have bishop b6, winning the game. If king goes to e7, we have bishop c5 check. And still the king can't go to d8 because of bishop b6. So the position is just losing for black. Yeah, it's just winning attack. Queen takes e5 is also possible, but I think it's just like way too loose. I'm sure the engine gives like +3 here or something. It's like opening the e-file, so dangerous. I mean, bishop h2, we have knight f3. Just looks extremely dangerous. Maybe, yeah, actually bishop h2 is already seeing good, or looking good, because if black trades queens, just running into rook e1. Okay, maybe this is a good exercise. I actually really like playing this game. So after queen takes e5, what do you guys think is the computer evaluation here with best play? Bazoo says more than +3, but you got to give a concrete number. What is Stockfish going to say about this position? Midnight Rhino says 4.1. Hey, thanks for checking out the stream, Anoop. Catch you later. 3.66 from Bazoo. I'll give you guys like 10 more seconds to get your guesses in. Oh hey, Master112 following to say 5.0 plus 5. It's a big number. Okay guys, let's see. Oh boy. Looks like we got plus 6. Are we gonna get plus 7? There it is. Plus 7 after knight f3. Oh, but then Master112 went down 3.6. Your first guess was much closer. 3.8 was another suggestion. But yeah, 7.3 after knight f3. Oh yeah, it's just immediately like just winning just winning a piece. I mean, there's nothing to evaluate here. Okay, so it's bad. Getting upwards of plus 8. Okay, so black does not take the pawn. He goes bishop b7. Bishop d3. So this is kind of white's point. Now we're just kind of developing, and f5 pawn is a great asset. At some point I might want to take on e6. And there are already some ideas of like knight takes e6, after de, or fe6, de6, knight e6, fe6, bishop g6 check. And then black's king is kind of getting caught in the crossfire. So super dangerous position for black. So I think my prep went bishop e7. I consider this the main move, which is a clever move because if I take on g7 here, black can castle queenside. And then this is actually super unclear because now like the rook is coming to g8 and white's queen is super awkward. Hey Moonwalk, thanks for checking out the stream. But after bishop e7, instead my idea is just to go king b1 here, just like improving my king. Natural move, always play king b1, yada yada yada. And now it's not easy for black to continue. If they castle, we don't have f6 immediately because our queen on g3 is hanging and black just takes. But we do have this fancy move bishop h2, which is obviously a computer move. And now it's threatening f6, and this is just terrible for black. Really bad. So after king b1, black basically has to play with the king in the center for a little while, and obviously this is an extremely sharp position. It just feels like things are much more comfortable here for white. Like the bishop is just calmly defending the c2 pawn, so rook c8 doesn't really provide much benefit. If queen a5 here, I think there's this amazing move knight c5 in this position, which is really fantastic. Just okay, attacking everything, and the knight can be taken in so many ways, but queen takes c5, knight takes e6, and then knight takes g7, and then f6, and it's just a disaster for black. Huge attack. And if bishop takes c5, there's knight b3. And then we're just getting the piece back. We're going to take on c5 either with the knight or maybe with the bishop to take the dark squares. And yeah, black's position is just in ruins. So super dangerous position. And basically like only an engine can really play for equality here with black. My opponent played rook c8, which I think is a very natural move actually. Because okay, he's just like getting the rook in the game. Typical Sicilian play. But he's keeping the bishop on f8 because he feels like he has to defend the g7 pawn, which makes sense already. Not everyone is going to be comfortable with queen takes g7, like castling queenside. It looks super risky for black. Is that a novelty? Which move, Bazoo? Which move? Oh, rook c8. I'm not sure if it's a novelty. It wasn't a move I checked, unfortunately. So that might be a new move, but it definitely wasn't a prepared novelty because, well, you know, you can tell first of all, and yeah, he was already spending time, and objectively, I think it's it's not a good move. Because now after king b1, it's hard for black to develop the bishop. He keeps saying he bluffed me. He didn't bluff me. I'm sure he didn't know what he was doing here. The position was just like winning for white. So 0 chance. Now it's hard for black to develop because bishop e7, I'm taking on g7. And this is no longer playable for black because he can't castle. And if he can't go bishop e7, he can't really develop, which is a big problem. He can go queen a5. This is kind of a typical idea. b3, let's say knight c3 check. I have to take, b takes c3. I was analyzing this kind of position in my prep quite a bit because of course it looks very scary and it feels like white is just about to get checkmated. But after bishop e3, I think white is pretty solid here because the bishop can always just come back to c1. And black still has huge problems just with the development because you just can't play with the king in the center forever. White is, I think, very, very close to just taking, popping on e6, bishop g6 check, and just going for this straightforward attack. But he kind of surprised me with this move h4. So at this point I was definitely out of book, and I was thinking about what to do. I felt like I just kind of have to take the pawn. I didn't really see another reasonable choice. Like queen e1, for example, would allow knight f4, and then this looked kind of annoying. So I took the pawn. I mean, I realized his idea is either to play like bishop e7 and then try to get a tempo, in which case I would just go back to g3, and I don't think he's really achieved a whole lot. If knight takes f5, I take on h8, and knight takes d4. Well, this one's just defended. There are some lines where I think black can get at least an exchange, but here I think black is just down to rook. So there's not much black can really do here. I don't think there's any compensation to be found. Okay, and then finally there was the move he played in the game, which I realized was his idea. It was just play queen takes e5. So he gives up one pawn, but he grabs the e5 pawn. I mean, it's kind of an important pawn for white, but at the same time, it's also opening up the e-file. So objectively, I felt like this should be really good for white, because it just looks like, okay, the e-file is now open. If I could just castle and get my rook to f1, then it should be game over. It should just be like just breaking through by direct force. But it was not so easy to figure out what to do here. I decided to take on e6 first because I didn't see a reason not to. I think the engine was saying I should play bishop h2, queen f6, oh, and then drop back the queen to f2. Yeah, this was kind of an important detail because here I have the f2 square. I haven't taken yet, so my queen is defended. And then something like bishop e7, g4 just looks really strong for white. Just kind of like restricting his knight. If he castles, his king is still going to be in huge danger. And yeah, just looks super, super dangerous for black. I'm guessing castles we can even just play a move like rook g1. And just so hard for black to deal with g5 anyway. So for the pawn, I mean, white just has... Oh, I'm not even down a pawn, so yeah, white just has a huge attack there. Yeah, so I definitely agree. I mean, fe6, I think this was probably not the right way because now after bishop h2, queen f6, I don't have queen f2 anymore. So instead of bishop h2, I was considering very much the move knight takes e6. I mean, it's actually my first choice. Where if queen takes e6, rook e1, white is just winning immediately. If f takes e6, bishop g6 check, and the king is just in way too much danger here. Knight f7, I can just grab the rook on h8. White is just winning, and the king has to go to d7. I think my plan was knight b6 check here, and then yeah, king c6. And once I saw queen c4 check, I knew, okay, has to be good for white. We're just taking on c8. Black's king is is getting mated. So for the piece, white has, you know, everything. Also, whenever the king goes to d6, we have bishop h2 in all of these lines. So that's kind of an important detail. So yeah, this looked really good. And then, okay, I decided to use my calculation skills to good use, and I wanted to check, like, okay, knight takes e6, queen e6 is winning for white, f takes e6 is winning for white. What else can black play here? Maybe some like knight f5 or something, but knight f5 just doesn't work. We can just take, and black is not really getting enough for the exchange here. I was thinking something like this could happen, but bishop c5, for example, and whoops, white has the material and also the initiative, and yeah, should be game over. But then I spotted bishop e7 as a retort, hitting my queen and blocking the e-file. So now queen takes e6 is a very viable possibility for black. And if I allow queen takes e6 and I don't get much for the piece, then I'm just going to be losing. So my calculation was as follows: knight takes g7, queen takes g7. White has 2 pawns for the piece. Black's king is open, but yeah, this looks super unclear to me because I didn't actually see like what my targets are, and black's pieces are actually, I don't know, they're kind of reasonably coordinated. they're all kind of defending each other. My rooks are not connected, which is usually must have. My queen is under attack, so I'm losing a tempo. It's not like I can just play like rook he1 here and just bishop c5 and just pile on. So I really just wasn't sure if white is getting enough here. I felt like intuitively it's probably good, even if I don't have anything fancy. But yeah, it just looked like white should be looking for something more clear compared to this. It turns out bishop d4 is kind of like a very strong move here, which I don't think I saw this move in my calculation. Maybe if I saw this move, I would have I would have played it. I'm not sure. Because black doesn't have time to take on h4, I take on g7, and then I'm winning back the material. So black has to play bishop f6 here, and rook he1 certainly seems possible. King f8, and I'm not sure what to do here. Maybe knight c. No, sorry. Queen is hanging right now, so we have to kind of figure out what to do about this. Bishop c5. Rook takes. Oh, that's a nice trick. I forgot that this square was covered. And okay, looks like white is white winning? I don't understand what the material is. Okay, rook for 2 pieces, 2 pawns, bishop e4, yeah. Okay, so this looks good. Bishop c5, interesting. So then if king g8, I guess we can just move the queen f2 or something. Or queen e4, we always have to be careful of knight c3 check. But yeah, maybe just like queen f2. I mean, this position I would be happy to play. I would absolutely play this because it feels like, yeah, black's rook, knight, both kind of dead. White's pieces are nicely coordinated now. I have ways to like kind of improve my position. And I already have 2 pawns. I have like g4. It's definitely enough. I would imagine it should be good. Oh, I think I already analyzed this line. So yeah, plus over minus. But yeah, in the game, I mean, I didn't see bishop d4 in this position. And so if I don't see this move, yeah, I don't really have another move, I think. Like queen e1, black can even castle. So this was good, but I mean, definitely not super clear. There were other options as well. I guess knight b3 is quite reasonable. But yeah, knight e6 was a nice one. So bishop h2, queen f6, and yeah, now actually objectively I should probably take on f6 here. Although the engine was giving this amazing line with queen e4. So blundering the queen, but apparently white is better or something. Like, just queen is just dominated. Bishop takes a6 is coming. I think this is actually the big point. Like bishop takes a6, and then bishop b5 check, and black's king is like super busted. Is it actually winning? Oh, okay. Black has to take on d4 and give back the queen. And I guess black is okay here. Queen was going to h4. This would have been the other option. Looks like bishop g3 for some reason. Queen h5. Okay, to get the queen off of the knight. Then bishop takes a6. And yeah, white has a fantastic initiative here, which is pretty cool. So rook he1. Easy position to play for both sides, I would say. Okay, so going back, I think queen f6 here was definitely the move I should have played, because the endgame just feels pleasant for pleasant for white. If black takes with the knight, then we have knight b6, and this looks pretty uncomfortable for black to deal with. I mean, the initiative is just very annoying for black here. Rook doesn't seem to have a lot of good squares. And then after g takes f6, I think bishop e4. And structurally, black has some issues here. Is like the f-file is going to be weak, and there's a lot of pressure here. I think I'm threatening like knight b6 stuff, or maybe bishop takes d5 and then knight b6. And basically, black just feels underdeveloped. Knight on h6 here and all of these lines is just not getting out. So objectively, this is what I should have done. Yeah, Bazoo asks, what is the knight on h6 doing? Absolutely nothing. But, you know, I wanted to keep my attacking chances alive. And I played this move, queen e1, which is, I guess you guys can see, in my opinion, a question mark move. Not a good move. So yeah, I mean, knight is just hanging on d4. Of course, I saw that, and I had something in mind against queen takes d4. But the problem is, I mean, I just kind of like misevaluated the position, because bishop comes to b5 with check. So black gets to take one piece, then black takes a second piece, and then after I take the queen, black is going to take a third piece on a4. And 3 pieces is kind of a lot for the queen, even though black's king is like undeveloped and white has some initiative there. It's just too much material. So I think this move is good if not for queen takes d4. Yeah, and black's knight on d5 is just so strong, and then this knight can jump to f5 one day too. I don't think black had another move. Yeah, my move was really good if not for queen takes the knight on d4. I mean, it looked so strong. It's like rook f1 is coming, and then I get knight takes e6 for sure. I mean, the sacrifice has to be working, and yeah, I mean, it's just lost for black, except for the fact that black can give the queen. So queen d4, bishop b5 check. I mean, I was looking for other moves here as well, because I realized that like this position is just not going to be good for white. But if I take on a6, for example, queen a7, I just didn't see how white is going to be continuing here, and I don't think white has much for the piece. Bishop e4 is also possible, I thought, trying to take on d5 and win a piece this way, but I think after queen c4, I just didn't have anything here. Like b3, queen goes back to b5, and Everything is just being defended. No, Bazoo, I just simply blundered the number of pieces. So after bishop e5, I thought I'm giving 2 pieces for the queen. Rook takes d4, b takes a4. Turns out I'm giving 3 pieces. So had I known that, I probably wouldn't have gone for I probably wouldn't have played bishop h2 here. I think this is kind of where the blunder happened, because my plan after queen f6 was all ready to go queen e1. And then I just kind of continued along with it. So yeah, I think this is probably actually my worst move of the tournament, this queen e1. My second worst move was the one we saw in the previous game, queen c1 check. so those are my 2 worst moves in the tournament, I think, just from a strictly mathematical standpoint. Yeah. So kudos to Mishra. I mean, he didn't even hesitate like that much. He understood, I think, after just a couple of minutes that if he doesn't take on d4, he's going to be losing. And actually after queen takes d4, black is certainly the one playing for the advantage. Yeah, exactly. I spent a lot of time calculating knight takes e6. Couldn't make it work, and then queen e1 was just, yeah, not enough. But okay, game goes on, so I play queen e2, threatening phantom check queen b5, which is just met with bishop c6, and then okay, maybe queen a6. I can at least be annoying with the queen here. But bishop e7, and I'm just not in time, turns out. Like queen b5 check, queen a6, black castles, and rook c4 would actually be very nice for whites, because it just feels like, okay, black's pieces are hanging, but black has this nice move, bishop b7, and this just kind of like consolidates everything. I think I have to play like queen b5. You can maybe take on c4 here, queen takes c4, and basically once black consolidates the position, I think it's very, very difficult for white. Maybe even just a3 here, just to get the counterplay going against white's king. Yeah, all of black's pieces here are just kind of poised beautifully to go after the king here on b1 or b2. So yeah, actually bishop can just sit on a8, and like literally everything is defended, every single piece in black's position. Not what the queen wants to see. The queen needs targets, things that are hanging, kings that can be checked. When everything is defended in black's position, I think the queen just gets outplayed. Okay, so instead I went for rook hd1. And I don't know, I actually did feel like I was getting somewhere, because I wanna take on d5 here. And if I can get this in, this would be pretty dangerous for black. But he castles. He correctly judges the following line, I think. Rook takes d5. I get to give some material back. I also get some material back. E takes d5. Queen takes e7. Rook f8. Looks super dangerous for white, but I do have queen takes b4. And actually, I mean, I felt much more optimistic once we got here, because now I'm not really losing materially speaking. I have queen and pawn for the 2 rooks. But yeah, also seems like white is doing okay. Like, okay, I have some huge back rank issues, but apart from that, if I can fix them, then the a4 pawn is going to be super weak here, and the passed a pawn is kind of a nightmare for this knight to deal with. Yeah, somehow the position deserved better for black. Maybe. But I don't know actually what black is supposed to do here, because rook takes d5 is coming, like knight f5. I think we take and go g4, and then bishop comes to d6, and I think this is probably not so fun. Or actually, maybe queen b5 check. Oh yeah, queen b5 and queen d7 I think was what I found, and this also looked very good. A3 is possible, but then white probably takes and goes for all this stuff again, and then maybe check. And here. I don't know, rook d8. I don't know, something like this. Possible, still feels annoying for black to deal with. I'm not really sure. Okay, I guess black is totally winning here, so never mind. Then a3 is working. Yeah, a3 is totally working as well. But yeah, I mean, it does feel annoying for black to have to figure out all this stuff. So I feel like castling was not a terrible decision. I mean, it loses some advantage, but honestly, I feel like the position ends up pretty difficult for white to play. Although I do end up blundering, I think, pretty quickly. So queen takes b4. Rook went down to e2. And yeah, actually here is basically where I messed it up. So I should have gone a3 and just given this pawn. But with the key move bishop e5. Okay, so bishop can't be taken. Now bishop is like defending just the only pawn in the position I really care about. And well, I have counterplay with queen takes a4, so I think white is kind of in business, and apparently according to the engine, white is doing fine. So I had a similar idea to this, but I just couldn't make it work. And I ended up playing c3 here, which to me just felt like I had to. So of course I just missed bishop e5 here. I think if I had seen this position, probably would have won for this. But okay, he goes rook takes g2, bishop e5. And basically what I was kind of hoping for was for black to go rook e8. And my point was, okay, bishop d4 is not possible because of rook e1, but I can play a3. And the bishop is not really hanging again because of queen b8 check. So I did see some tricks with this bishop on e5, but not the right one. Instead, after a3, let's say black moves the king, I play bishop d4, rook e1, or rook e2 first. Either way, I can play c4. And then I get this construction that I'm looking for, and to me this felt like, actually, I mean, maybe even a promising position for white, because black's rooks all of a sudden feel super ineffective. The bishop is very strong here, and then, yeah, I can take this pawn. Maybe I should even take the a pawn first, just so I can get the counterplay moving. And yeah, I think this is basically fine for white, or at least fine. But instead of bishop e5, he goes rook c4. Queen b5 and rook e4. So now I kind of realize actually what's about to happen, because he's now threatening mate, and bishop is not really hanging because I still have queen b8 check. So I played a3. And again, everything looks good. If he plays like rook e2 here, then I still have c4. Bishop cannot be taken. I defend. I get the structure we're looking for, and things are good. But the problem is he has rook e1 check. He attacks not the second rank, but the first rank. King a2, rook gg1. And so this was always a phantom threat in my mind, but usually this can just be met with queen takes a4, and I cover the checkmate, king gets out, the pawn is running. But in this case, once I take on a4, the bishop ends up hanging. So yeah, queen takes a4, black can safely take on e5, and I don't have queen b8 check. I mean, I tried to play it, but he's like, no, this is a illegal move. Queen doesn't work like that. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. So I tried, but he didn't let me. So yeah, how long did he take on rook c4 is the question. I don't remember. I think it was a few minutes, but I'm not sure if he had seen this, or maybe he just started. I think he was probably expecting queen b8 check, because it kind of feels more natural from white's point of view. But I think I'm still losing here, like a3, rook e4, and I just don't have a good way of dealing with this threat of doubling rooks on the first rank. Hey, Yahya, I will be posting the video on YouTube, so you can check it out later. Yeah, I'll be posting analysis of all my rounds, in fact. And yeah, basically, since I can't take on a4 here, or even if I could, my bishop is hanging, white is just lost. So I think it's basically over already here. I don't think I had a save at this point. Oh, I'm sorry, there is a minor detail here. So the bishop does get back to d4. So after rook e4, bishop d4, the bishop does cover the g1 square. So there's no immediate rook g1 in this position. But black can still go like, okay, rook e2, for example, tie me down to the pawn, queen b4, knight f5. And basically this position is winning for black. Because I'm tied down to this pawn. I can't really play c4 because, of course, the bishop is hanging. And I have to be very careful of black just kind of liquidating everything into a winning king and pawn endgame. Because eventually black is always going to have this passed f pawn. And so, yeah, basically hopeless position for white. I can't take on a4 because I'm just going to get mated soon. And yeah, nothing to do. Okay, so queen b5, rook e4, a3. He gave check. Rook g1, I took. Queen a8 check. Oh, there's a suggestion for queen b8, then bishop d4 when rook is on c4. Yeah, also possible. So bishop d4. Then I guess just knight f5. And I'm pretty sure any kind of endgame like queen versus two rooks is just going to be bad for me because black's rooks seem super active and king is safe. Apparently the engine is giving b3, rook c6. And looks like a rook is coming back this way to e6. So it's basically all bad, nothing to do. Yeah, and then from here I think his technique was quite good. So I gave a check. I start running the pawn. Now he just has to find a way to coordinate his pieces, and he should be able to stop my pawns and win the game. Though I honestly feel like this position is not that easy for black to win. I think a lot of lesser players would mess it up and allow the queen some chances. I think especially people always get nervous when they're dealing with passed pawns, so it can like cloud the judgment a little bit. But he found a nice way to coordinate. He played rook e4 here. So kind of putting pressure on the pawn, and the point is if I push, he has the immediate check, king b3, and then second rook swings to a1, and losing the first pawn. So that's definitely bad news. If I take on d5, which looks natural because I do want to be trading pawns here, I felt like this position should be lost because, well, black just needs to find a way to coordinate his rooks. Maybe even putting the rook here, as awkward as it looks, but queen d3 we can bring the rook back. But basically if black can just coordinate the rooks and take one of these pawns, then it's over. Whenever I give up the queen for the two rooks, the knight easily deals with the c pawn, and then black just wins on the king side. So black's plan here is basically just to simplify, just to get white to give up the queen for the two rooks, and then the knight wins the endgame. Maybe it's tricky if I'm left with like two passed pawns, but that's very unlikely because the rooks just need a couple of moves to coordinate and then just line up behind the b pawn and win the game. So it should be lost. Yeah, it seems like any move, rook f4, rook h4, and the rooks are just coming down. So, okay, after some thought, I tried b4, because might as well just get the pawns moving. And rook e2 check, king b3, rook b1 check, king a3. So I was obviously hoping for rook a1 check, and then followed by repetition, which would definitely save me a half point, but of course he realized that he should be playing for more. So he didn't even repeat moves, which actually I found pretty strange because, timing wise, he was down to like a couple minutes here. I think he had only 2-3 minutes, and then he decided to play this move Rook C1, which is a perfectly winning move. There's nothing wrong with this move, but I think from a practical point of view, of course he should repeat once. This is move 40, get to the time control, and then he has 30 minutes to think, and he can do whatever he wants. It's just it's not like his move is bad, but he's much less likely to blunder on move 42 than he is on move 40. So I think you should always just repeat once. It doesn't mean you're offering a draw. Sometimes that happens. You repeat once and your opponent immediately offers you a draw. Oh, so you want to draw then because you're repeating. But obviously you're well within your rights to repeat the position, and you do not have to accept any draws. So, but okay, Rook C1 is still perfectly good. If I play King B3, then he's going to just double up on the C pawn. With I think just Rook E3. I take on D5, and I think I was thinking he was going to take with this rook, although both are probably good. But this seemed like the cleanest way to just force White's king back to the first rank and then play like Rook H2. And then the rooks are just swinging over, and yeah, with zero counterplay against Black's king, then the queen just has no chances whatsoever. So, okay, I pushed A5. Rook takes C3, king A4. D4, now Black's d-pawn starts running. Queen D5, D3. If I push A6, he has, I think, a number of ways to win the game here. D2, A7. So I think one easy way is actually just to promote. Queen takes, Rook A2 check, take this pawn, and then Black's rooks just kind of easily gang up against the b-pawn, and then they just take it, and game over. Or maybe even simpler, actually, instead of promoting, is to just go... I don't know if this is simpler, but I think a fancy way to win is to go Rook C1. So if promotes, then we can either give a check and then take. It's probably the simplest. No, sorry. Here Queen D3 check is a big problem. So instead, Black just promotes. This is kind of the simple way. Queen takes D1, Rook takes D1, and again, Black's rooks coordinate. They take the pawn. They win the game. As long as Black doesn't blunder a rook, should be fine. But after Rook C1, White also has Queen D3 check. And then here Black would have to see that after F5, Queen takes E2, promote, take. White can not promote because of Rook A1 and just taking. So Black would kind of have to see a lot to make this work. And King B5, I think, should be not in time for White. I think we can just push this one. And yeah, White is just way too slow. Okay, so A6 wasn't working. I pushed B5 because, okay, what else? D2, B6. And yeah, now of course Rook C1 is, I think, less clear because here Black's pawns have reached pretty far. And so I think during the game I wasn't even sure if Black is making a draw here, but let's see. Oh yeah, Black is still winning. Oh right, because Black still has these annoying checks from behind. So if we push B7, can give check. Say King C6, F4. Yeah, it always looks like the pawns are fast, but I guess Black is faster. It's just gonna have a queen and then extra knight pretty soon. Okay, so even this is not working for White, but it doesn't really matter. Instead, after B6, he pushed F5, which I think was just a smarter move, practically just covering all the checks. Now if I push B7, again he has Rook C1. I make a second queen, but he promotes, and this position is pretty hopeless for White. Just checks are coming on the A and B files. king, queen, pawn are all kind of hanging, and black's rooks are just cleaning up. So okay, after f5, I just resigned because I just realized there's no more chances. Black is just easily winning here, and he played so well up to this point that I thought, okay, there's like zero chance he's gonna mess it up from here after pushing f5. So yeah, tough game. Definitely a pretty nasty blunder with queen e1, just like miscounting pretty much. Just dropping the piece, or dropping the material with queen takes d4. But yeah, what are you going to do? It happens. I felt like, my opponent played well. And definitely a big chance missed, though, from the opening, because the position, I think, was objectively close to winning. And I just couldn't figure out exactly how to do it. But that happens. So this game brings me to -1 in the tournament with 2.5 out of 6. And 3 more games to go. Alright guys, I'm gonna wrap it up for tonight. I'll be back with my final 3 games tomorrow evening. I think somewhere around the same time, so maybe 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m. Pacific or so. Hey, thanks Bazoo for helping out with the analysis, much appreciated. And yeah, thanks to all who have checked out the stream so far and for following and cheering and so on. I will be back with more stuff, more analysis of my games tomorrow.